everyone. Thank you for joining me for the Sonny Chung Show. This is my podcast. Today is a great pleasure to have a friend of mine on this today's show. Is Justin Muller. He's a film producer and he also a studio consultant that who actually live in China. And he makes some time for me today to share his story and how he come moving from United States and live in China to grow his business. I want him to share his story with you guys, and so that way I'm going to share much about it. So, Justin, can you share with our audience? Tell me a little bit about you. How do you make the leap from moving from United States to China to open your business?
Sure. Well, it started, about 24 years ago. I've been in the studio real estate and production industry. Started out very young doing camera and lighting and grip rentals to many different companies based in Dallas, Texas area. I was able to get control over the studios at Las Colinas based in Irving. I was the president for many years there. Very successful. I'm bringing in 20th Century Fox television to the Dallas-Fort Worth market for a long-term strategy, non-show specific contract. Shows that were produced were like Prison Break, The Deep End, and Lone Star were the three top ones, and many other shows that I worked on there in Dallas, Texas. And I met a Chinese guy at one of these Asian events and in Dallas, and he was still in college at SMU, and he says, why don't you take a look at China? There's a lot of studio throughout China, and obviously the one most famous one was the Wanda Studios based in Qingdao, and that's kind of what perked my interest, looking at the massive amounts of commercial real estate being specifically developed for the film, television, and entertainment industry all across China. So that's kind of what brought me here, the intrigue, the challenge, knowing that Hollywood has struggled to be able to enter the marketplace over the many years. Many people have tried to enter the market. They come from more of a corporate mentality, and I've always been the entrepreneur, visionary, kind of seeing things before they happen. And so I thought, after, selling the property in Dallas and kind of going into commercial real estate and advisory services in Texas. So I felt like I had enough commercial real estate experience and also the studio and production experience that I could offer something unique to China. We started out, pretty high hopes. This is all pre-COVID. So, things were very on the upswing here in China, and, sold everything in Dallas and moved to China, and everybody thought I was crazy, and, started doing some studio inspections and meeting people. I taught a few courses at the Beijing Film Academy on studio management. It's a very misunderstood sector of our film and television entertainment industry, studio real estate. It's relatively a new term to use studio real estate when you're referring to studio assets. Many studios, even in the United States, back in the early days of the 80s and 90s, went bankrupt because they didn't understand the industry and what an independent studio looks like, and that it's a service industry. And you have to check all the boxes to be able to allow the end user, which are producers, production companies, to relocate outside of Hollywood. Everyone's looking for a film incentive. Everyone's looking for the most cost-effective way to produce content. And now there's more content being produced now in our lifetime than ever before. So the demand for studio real estate is the highest it's ever been, because there's much more need for content to fuel the over-the-top platforms and the streamers these days. So really, long format storytelling really stabilizes the commercial real estate. My concept is to come into the Chinese market, assess the studio real estate, uh, do the upgrades and the necessary things to create the ecosystem to be able to allow higher quality production companies to enter inside of China, to produce Chinese Mandarin language content for a Mandarin audience, and giving them the same advantage that the rest of the world has, having a standardization, having a great management platform, and maintaining the asset. I find here in China, with all the commercial real estate assets, the Chinese struggle to maintain the asset.
Hmm.
So they can build the asset, but they struggle once it's completed and once it's occupied to then continue to know how to manage the property. So their property management skills are very lacking here. And that's where I excel at property management, specifically when it relates to a studio and production facility. And studios here are very unique. They're not like what you would see in most of the world. Studios here are located outside of a city center, which is not normal. They primarily are in small rural areas that have a tourism component. So the local people love to travel on holidays. The young people like to go out and see different scenic things. So these studios really, number one, attract a tourism base. So
Huh.
they utilize what we call the backlot sets to attract tourism, and they open up the backlot so that tourists can roam freely around the backlot, looking at where their favorite shows have shot and take pictures and watch produced events that are produced by the studio to entertain the tourism. So number one, the draw is, and the focus of the business income is through tourism. So the studio production itself, I call it the lost leader. It's leading everything because the studio has to essentially give away the stages and the backlot sets and invest in set construction so that they can then say this production shot at this location, and then that attracts the tourism component.
Huh.
So production companies enjoy a very low cost environment where they can enter into a studio stage, backlot set, even build custom sets on raw backlot land that eventually is retained and owned by the studio, that then is used for the tourism, for their income and their return on their investment. So the rental market of the studios and infrastructure when it relates to production is very low. So if you come to China, the rental rates are very low, but then also the service is not there. So it's kind of like hand over the key mentality.
Okay.
Here's what we have. We don't provide much service, but please come and shoot, anything you want here in this studio environment. It's not regulated. It's not well maintained, but here it is. You fix it up. You do what you want with it. All the studio cares about is that it's a good IP, good, strong story that will attract their tourism and help boost their tourism and travel.
Wow.
So the business model is very different. So when you analyze a studio like in Qingdao that doesn't have a tourism component, they're just strictly sound stages and temporary backlot set construction areas. And this is mass on scale, large 40 sound stages for production. A lot of the big productions shoot at these studios because they're nice. They were originally designed by Pinewood from the UK. However, over the last 10 years, of course, what we talked about earlier, no maintenance. So they are coming into the property. They're getting a very favorable reduced rate. It's hand over the key mentality, come and shoot and do whatever you want, but no service. Not a lot of vendors for camera, lighting. So if you're working on the studio lot and you need something, there's nothing there. You have to call from a major city to have it brought in. So things take longer. There's not a lot of cohesive production community. So the people that come to these studios, because they're in rural areas, they live in the top tier cities, and then they just come in for the production, living out of hotel, working 7 days a week, no breaks. They shoot. Once they're done, then they go back to where they came from. So it's not really creating that traditional live, work, play. So with me, enter me, I'm trying to work with shareholders that already own the studio assets, that are not really making much money, fixing up the asset, trying to bring them entities from outside of China that are willing to do a company relocation. The local government incentivizes the company to relocate, not necessarily the production directly, but incentivize the company that every year they stay and they hire X amount of employees, the local government incentivizes them. So that's kind of the business model. It's also similar to, I think, how Texas has been successful in their governor's enterprise fund over the last several years, where they're incentivizing companies to relocate to Texas. My vision is very similar. So what I'm seeking is to work with shareholders in China that own the real estate asset, fix it up to a standard, go and find these anchor tenants that are willing to sign a 7-year, 10-year lease on stages and backlot area and non-show specific, and they commit to then producing content in China, in the Mandarin language content, whether it's actually distributed in China directly or if it's distributed outside of China, because there's so many, Mandarin speakers, and they're looking for hometown, Chinese stories and content that they can relate to. And this is very similar to what Netflix has done in other marketplaces. But because of content restrictions in China, Netflix has not pursued really entering the Chinese market as strong as I would like for them to have tried. But I think if I lay the groundwork for this and bring in a smaller entity, it'll start laying the groundwork for the bigger streamers to consider coming to China, creating a unique platform that meets the censorship requirements. There's several companies that are based in Hong Kong that are, buying up Mandarin language content, and they're not even distributing in China. Their platforms are everywhere else but China, but it's Mandarin content that they're buying for their platforms. So this is a slowly process to enter the marketplace. I've also been consulting with people that are in the United States or outside China that may have an interest on doing business with a Chinese company. I've been their owner's rep and have went into inspect a factory, inspect a property, been their eyes and ears, kind of like the early location scout, coming to look and report back to the client and to their shareholders, so that they don't waste time coming and then finding out, well, the photos and the information they received back home doesn't really line up to what they thought it was. And I've saved them, the stress and the time of coming to look for a first look. So I can kind of be that entry bridge point. So if you have any clients that are looking at China for any reason, I can definitely be that first man on the ground and start teeing things up and reporting back information about the property, about the company, about the factory, with reporting and photos and video, and also helping prepare for that person to arrive, so that they have a very, nice experience. The communication skills can definitely be difficult here in China. I just experienced something where I went to a studio property, and Colliers International, large commercial real estate group, set up the appointment, got to the site, and things were not communicated correctly. and I had to retreat and report back. So you don't want to waste that kind of time coming to China, and it needs to be teed up properly and be very detailed and well organized to really come into the marketplace. And you have to take the lead. You can't really let the Chinese dictate and lead your business. You, as the person wanting to come into the market, you have to be strong. You have to come, with some capital and investment behind you. If you come here just thinking the Chinese are, wealthy and they're going to open up their arms and just start hiring you and paying you, I can tell you it's a fantasy. You've got to come to the table with money, capital, to be able to control them and guide them. Otherwise, if you let them lead, 9 times out of 10, the project, whatever you're doing, will end in not a favorable outcome for both parties.
Wow, it sounds like it's a wild, wild west in the studio real estate in China. So,
It is.
Justin, there's a lot of information. I want to dissect a few of them. Would you pretty much a consultant for studio to make sure all the assets is right, and make sure they go accordingly. So I can tell you have a vision, you have integrity. Um, how would that, when you make a mind shift, okay, from United States to China, is that kind of value you bring to China, and how did the culture adapt to your style of doing business?
Well, even before I moved to China, I was, been in the Asian community, had family that was Chinese. So I wasn't, too cultural shocked, but definitely, someone that has never been here will definitely be shocked. Whatever you think is normal in the United States and everywhere else in the world, 9 times out of 10, it's the complete opposite here in China. It's mind blowing. So you can really expect that.
So you say you adapting to the change throughout your extended career of the studio operation. I would say the property management kind of style, mentality, totally different to 2 different country wise. So what the key lesson have you learned from adapting to the culture and the business change in the 2 countries?
I think, the Chinese people are very open and warm, but, they're, at the end of the day, they're very money driven. And in this economy, it's hard to really unlock money from the Chinese, and investment has been definitely tightening up. A lot of companies have exited China. Investment has been pulled back quite a bit. Large commercial real estate developers have went bankrupt or are in trouble. So development has slowed. I've inspected so many different large scale developments from major developers here in China where construction and everything is halted, and the local government has had to come in and take over the property. And then the local government doesn't really know what to do with it as well. And then they bring me in and thinking I'm going to bring them the great idea, but when you get into these massive properties, and I'm talking massive on scale, these properties are mind blowing, the size and the scope of these developments that are just halted and stopped. And they're primarily outside of the city center. And young people do not want to go live, in the countryside. They really like to be in the city. So building these sites, have been very detrimental to the real estate market here. So it's very difficult.
So I mean, there's a lot. It sounds like there's a lot of distressed commercial real estate in China right now because they built a city that nobody live in it. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So there's a lot of distressed big developers that have come in, partnered with the local government. There's also a lot of state-owned enterprises that are government funded that also work with the private sector to develop these large, massive areas. I mean, it's all trying to, create jobs, create, a economic engine outside of the main cities, and trying to give the rural people, opportunities to grow and to grow these smaller areas of China. I mean, so if you're wanting to come into the marketplace, you've got to have some capital behind you. There is some opportunities here, but you need to do your due diligence. There's not a lot of data. If you go into these properties, I mean, even on the studio side, I say, where's your feasibility study? Oh, we never did one.
Hmm.
All
So they
right.
don't have a
So
lot of data available for you.
there's not a lot of
So
data available, and what is available, you don't necessarily can trust it. So you have to kind of do your own due diligence. You have to do your own investigating, look behind the curtain, because also there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, dog and pony style, things that they do. I've seen it, where they fix everything up the night before. It all looks great, and they only show you what you need to see, but if you look behind the curtain, it's not even what you just saw. It's completely the opposite. So
a lot of
it's a
smoke and
very
mirror.
unique marketplace. It's
Mm,
challenging. I still believe that there is opportunity here, but you have to assess the risk, and you have to have good Chinese partners that you can trust. And with those partners, they should also have good governmental relationships.
mm,
And, they always say you don't know how to do business in China. And I always say that's right, because I want to do normal business, international business. And I
right.
believe they want to do international business. So sometimes they don't even know what they're asking for when they ask for international and going a certain direction. And they like to pick and choose. They think it's an a la carte menu of how to do international business. And I've only found that there's only one way to do business, and it's to communicate, it's to follow international best business practices, use traditional commercial real estate metrics and evaluations to gather data and to analyze and to make sure you do your due diligence on who you're doing business with. There's also a do not do business with, they call it a dishonest list in China.
They have
Many
a
people don't.
dishonest list.
Yes. So you can run the
So trust,
report. You
trust is
can
very
run the report.
China.
Yeah. And find out individual people, find out company names. And these people are on these lists, and they're restricted from leaving the country. They're restrictive from travel. They cannot go on a high-speed train. They cannot fly in a plane. And they are restricted to their area, like on probation.
Oh, wow.
And they're not allowed to do business with state-owned enterprises and all these other restrictions, depending on the severity of what they've done to another party. So that's always good to check, is on these factories and properties and things. And also land rights, checking if there's any dispute on the land, who really has the rights to the land. There are several studios that we've encountered. They said, oh, we want to go IPO. And I said, you can't do that because you don't even have rights to this half the property.
Hmm.
So you really have to do your due diligence on everything you do. But, that's anywhere. Do your due
Right.
diligence,
Of
you
course.
know? And so I think you just have to do a little bit more, and you got to try a little bit hard. But there's always a return on that, to make sure you're doing the right thing and moving forward.
Well, just what you say is make a lot of investor if they want to go invest in China, they have a second guess what they need to do or try to find someone they trust because in China you have to trust somebody to do it's pretty much everywhere as a business person like in the United States or anywhere who you dealing with you got to know them right and
Correct.
it's just how funny you put a dishonest list in China they ask you to put out there for so they are changing they are trying to do international business the right way
Yep.
um, So based on that, how did you balance your skill and your passion? Because I know you're passionate about your film and you're very skillful in what you do. Like you're kind of like compliant officer to me, right?
Yep.
To make
Yep.
sure all the investors looking to invest in China, they don't get be dishonest or get cheat on, right? So that's
Right.
something of value you can bring to the table if they're looking to invest in your specific niche, because your niche is very specific.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very highly calculated niche market of real estate, and it's not well understood by most commercial real estate advisors. There's only probably a handful of people like me around the world that are really at their highest game, and they're usually based in LA and the UK. And there's also a very famous now, very successful studio real estate group called MBS Group, and they are the largest uh, group that is doing studio operations and management and equipment rentals throughout the United States and other parts of the world. And I've had many conversations with MBS Group, and they just said at this time, they're not looking at China as one of the places because of the barrier of entry is too great. They
Mhm.
did try to enter the marketplace, pre-COVID, and they had some challenges. But again, I don't think they were more corporate. And so they didn't have the entrepreneurial spirit that I have, that I've been here laying the groundwork for 6 years now. I can't believe it. I got a lot of gray hair now since you
Yes,
last
you
saw
do,
me.
buddy. Yes, yes, you do.
Sometimes I just have to go get it colored just to relive my youth. But I
You
kind of let
do.
it go, but I've gained a lot of gray hair.
You do. I mean, it sound for me is like in that technical role that you're playing right now. It's very high level of management, and your entrepreneurship you find your passion. I can tell you have a passion in it. So, how are you prioritize your personal and your professional development with you in China?
Well, it's been very difficult, twice divorced already, living on the road for the last 2 years. I gave up my apartment because I just was never there.
You
And
met married in China?
I've been married in China. I've been married in the US.
Okay.
So 2 times. I hope the third time's going to be the right one.
Third time to China.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
but so I've been
go ahead.
living on the road. It's been a unique lifestyle. A
It is.
director friend of mine, Brett Donahue, that's worked with Nicolas Cage on The Old Way. He's been to China with me here, and he's the one that kind of talked me into this living on the road lifestyle. He's a minimalist, and travels the world doing, film and television, directing and producing. And so I've been trying that lifestyle for the last 2 years, living in hotels, living in, unique properties, tents, RVs, all sorts of different things. So that's been one thing that's been fun living in China, is exploring it. I think I've traveled more in China than I have ever traveled in the United States, because the transportation system here is so much more advanced. I mean, you can hop on a train and go anywhere, and they have, the luxury business class, sleeper recliner chairs, and it's very convenient to travel in China. I don't even have a car, although I do have a Chinese driver's license, so I can drive if I need to and rent a car here. I have a scooter to get around, so I can get around that way. The cops, they try to pull me over for like no helmet or something, and then I just say May Wen T, and run away. It means no problem.
Wow, it sound you enjoying your life, which is amazing to me that you actually take that leap of faith and explore the whole China more than any American that I met. And it is a lifestyle that you choose on it and you're passionate about it. So how I guess you do have a producer mentality. You want to see things. Are you planning to do this so you can produce your own movie? What you've been seeing, or what's your goal?
So the goal is that I need to identify, as I'm doing the consulting, and I've been hired even by local governments to consult with the county governments on the real estate assets because they're an integral part of the local government. So a lot of my consulting is with the local government and not necessarily a stakeholder. But I'm looking, what I've been seeking and haven't found, and I thought I was close this month, is an individual private investor owner that has a distressed studio property in a favorable location that is willing to, do the change management, allow me to come into the property, do the necessary upgrades and repairs, identify a company that's willing to start basically we need to start a Chinese owned company with foreign investment group that can bring in the high quality IP that we can then use the Chinese talent and the language of Mandarin and producing long format storytelling, not necessarily movies. Movies really don't intrigue me at this stage in the game because it's such a higher risk than doing a streaming show and having that longevity of doing it for several years and stabilizing the real estate and the community and building the educational programs around that as well. So I'm still been searching for the last 6 years for the right business partner myself and finding the right location for a studio and then getting control and finding that true management where I have the autonomy to be the studio president once again, chapter 2. I struggled, early in my career to find the studio. I found it when I was young,
Right.
very quickly in Texas. And I want to recreate the same business model that I did in Texas here with the right investment group and the right people. So that's the long-term vision. And I haven't given up yet. I'm still pursuing that. Even though COVID has left me with major setbacks and the, geopolitical situation has definitely shifted in the last several years here. But I think there's still something here and I'm not going to give up on it until, I feel like I've exhausted all possibilities. I mean, let me give you a little example. So there's a company that everybody knows, Universal Studios, right? And they have theme parks. They took over 20 years from the time that they said they wanted to bring Universal to Beijing for a theme park to then opening. The whole start to finish and opening day was a 20-year process. Now, I don't have 20 years, but you can see the timetable that it takes to possibly enter this marketplace. But once you do enter the marketplace and you can stabilize it, I still believe there is a return on investment.
20-year investment. I mean, like you say, you don't have that much time to I mean, don't give on your dream. That's what keeps you driven. You've been stick to your gun and do all this time and try to find your partner. And I hope you do going to find that the right partner you're looking for with your connection with the government official in China and everything else. I think you one step closer to your goal, Justin. So I hope you can find what you're looking for, but the challenging that what intrigued me, the significant challenge you face in your career so far, right? And all the like includes what you've been falling and you get back up and you haven't give up. That's a great mindset. So expanding to China, managing complex movie studio operation and try to find that particular partner that you're looking for.
Yep.
How does that affect you oversight the whole business itself?
I mean, emotionally, it's you have setbacks. I just had a major setback the last few days, and you just have to keep on going and keep on track. And I have a lot of good Chinese friends here that are very supportive and doing their best to try to facilitate and help. And they believe in what I'm doing, and that gets me hope. And when I go and visit these distressed properties, studios, and a lot of these studios also have a hotel component attached to them,
Hmm.
I see the local people, uh, you know, I see where I'm doing. It's a definitely a mission because the local people are wishing to do better. They are struggling themselves and they want to professionally develop, and they've been, prevented from doing certain things. A lot of these properties I come to, these studio properties, these hotel properties, the local staff really enjoy seeing me. They champion what I'm trying to do, and I feel like I'm trying to help them, because if I can
Great.
really get control and give them what they deserve and elevate the local people and educate them and empower them and also inspire them to, that they can do better, uh, and I can offer that platform, then I think that's the end goal, helping people. I think that's where it still keeps me motivated.
Well, I think that's good to try to help people and try to change the community or so. And because with the distressed assets, it's the big real estate sitting there have no value whatsoever. Real
Yep.
estate have no value unless people are using it,
Correct.
right?
Yep. Yep.
So based on that, what's the obstacle you see so far for all those challenges that you're going through?
The obstacle, I think you've got to pick and choose. And sometimes people that have helped you at the beginning might not necessarily be helping you now. So after this last studio inspection setback, I need to evaluate, who I can keep with me and who is helping me and who I might need to realign with or change, because the current last 3 years, we've had a lot of setbacks, and I need to look at, is it me? I don't think so. I'm the one coming to the boots on the ground, trying to figure out and hands on and feel like I'm connecting with the local people and trying to do the right thing. I think it's the other people that might be hanging on my coattails that I need
Mm,
to evaluate and maybe surround myself with more smarter people than me, more, hands on like myself. I feel like I'm the only one that's really pushing and the hands on. Without me, the other people around me don't have much.
okay.
They're in commercial real estate. They're potential, people that can help once the operation is operational, but we're not to that stage right now. So I think I need to start looking for some new support systems around me and try a different approach. We haven't lost, we lost a few battles recently, but we haven't lost the war. So I'm going to keep on pursuing. I need some new, fresh troops and some new, fresh eyes, and maybe some smarter real estate advisors that can advise me and, help guide me to the right uh, real estate asset that I'm seeking.
Well, I think it could be a good strategy for you to find the right who to help you with
Yep.
this, even though you've been living for a long time in China and still seeking to write that partnership. So I guess it's come to your mindset, right? When you find that ideal partner that you're looking for, how do you qualify them?
Yeah, it's really hard because, also a thing I think is I'm too nice, and I feel like I'm trying to help other people build their business around my business. And I think that has been not helpful to me pursuing what I'm trying to do. So,
Mm,
mentoring young people and trying to get them on board, working with existing real estate companies that want to, elevate themselves, that want to go into this sector, but they're not the expert. I think I need to stop trying to help so many people, and maybe I need to start just helping myself first.
I think that's a good point. The whole conversation, I think that's a good point. For
And
you
helping
to help
myself
yourself first.
first, and really identifying who can help me. Maybe I need to stop being such of the helper, and maybe I need to allow other people to try to elevate and help me. And that might be difficult because I've always been able to help myself and to push, but I think at this point I need a higher power essentially to be able to, say, I understand what you're doing and I can help you and you can help me, and we need to have a equal footing in what we're bringing to the table.
Is the power collaboration. When you say this power collaboration, it sounds like China is one-way street,
Yes.
right? So to change that kind of mindset, you gotta find someone that have some type of Western influence. And
Correct.
I believe they are people out there like that. It's with your industry.
There is.
I don't know much about it. It just it's it does fall back on you, you know.
Yep.
And 1 second. Tới trước mẹ bây giờ mà bye. So the thing is that Justin, you gotta figure out it's not how, it's the who. That's a great book, right? I read that book. It's not how, it's who you're gonna able to work with. So that book helped me a lot
Hmm.
of time find the right person to work with. And
Yep.
sometimes we are trapped in our own mindset, and we have to actually question, is that dream when we're going to see the under the light, to turn on the light, right? Or
Yep.
who able to get you there as well? Do you feel
Yep.
the same?
I do. I agree with you. And I think, and maybe sometimes the dream can change, you
It
know,
can.
you can think that you're on the one direction and this is really what you want. And maybe there's some, time that needs to be meditated and thought about. And maybe the passion and the dream can shift.
It can.
And maybe that's something that I need to do as well. I need to look at other options, and I've been very laser focused, but maybe now is the time to really think about, is there any other way of doing it?
Yeah. Probably you gotta pivot, right? Because sometimes though dream is just dream, but you put a lot of work into it. I understand following the dream. I understand how to follow your passion and try to get your goal. The thing is that sometimes we just gotta to figure out a solution to reach our dream, or maybe a different path, a different direction to reach
Yes.
our goal, right? When you laser focus on one thing, that might not be the right one.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, Justin, I want to thank you for sharing
Yeah. For
for
inviting.
this information. But before I close this thing up, I want to ask you a question. What you know now compared to before, what kind of advice would you give your younger self in your current state right now?
I think I would say I'm on the right track. You can't give up, and keep on going. And the people that I've encountered that, have been the naysayers and been the people that said you can't do it, keep on going, keep on the path, follow that dream, follow that vision. I mean, there was been so many times when I was younger, I was a pretty young studio president, back in the
Mm-hmm.
20, when I was 20 years old, and so people said, "Oh, you're too young to be a president of a studio. You're too young, too young, too young." I said, "Well, I know how to do it." And one time I got so mad at somebody, I said, I'm going to be retired by 30 and have my money, and you're still going to be working at 60. And I said, "Fuck you." And I walked out. I remember that day on stage C at the studio. That guy just was so mean. I can't even remember what we were disputing about. Probably some price or something about he didn't want to pay for whatever, But just keep on pursuing, keep on dreaming, keep on pushing. Don't give up.
I love that. I love that. Follow your passion, and you will reach there. You're one step closer. I think you are. I can feel it. It's from the right studios that willing to share your vision.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing, Justin.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, that was